Welcome everyone, this is our Wednesday Wisdom where we go over tips, tricks, and information on band instrument repair. Today we're going to show you how to fix post holes that have been damaged by oversized springs. We have a hashtag for you. That is, of course, saxophone springs. Make sure you take that, put that in the comments below. That's going to give you a chance to win 15% off any of the courses that we have coming up in this year, which is, of course, September 18 through 21st. This is an advanced topic that we're doing in this tutorial today, and it relates to our advanced saxophone course coming up in September. We also have our October hand engraving course. That's on the 16th through the 18th. So if you're a technician in the middle of the summer rush, after you get through the back to school rush, you can come down and take the hand engraving course. And of course, if you are out there in saxophone repair land and you want to get down and dirty, get your hands dirty, come to MusicMedic this September, and we have a few spots left for our advanced saxophone course, so you can win a discount if you take that hashtag that's down below.
Hidden down in there, you got to look. It's like a magic eye.
There it
is.
is.
Relax your eye.
Now let me go back to this one. There it is, saxophone springs. Put that in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe. That will really help us keep this going. We do have a additional prize for today. Let's show that
Here we go.
really quick. That is the Oleg Pro Sax Enhancer. Bam! These are vintage, discontinued, no longer available.
Original packaging.
Original packaging palm key risers from our friend Oleg. And we had a box of these, so we're giving them away to our winners. And the winner for today is username RD Rodriguez 05. So RD, nice. Congratulations. Send me an email to rich, RICH, at MusicMedic.com. I will get you your discount code for any of our courses or the or your address for this Pro Sax Enhancer. And all right, Ryan. So we have a viewer requested topic today: how to fix an advanced. How to fix? Well, holy cow!
We got it. Pull it together.
How to fix a spring hole that's been wallowed out. Can we just talk about how to identify this issue, and just can you talk a little bit how this problem happens?
How does it happen?
Yes.
So what you'll find is a lot with vintage saxophones, particularly soprano saxophones, is over the years of them being worked on, springs breaking, new springs being put in. Over the years, that spring goes from, maybe something like this, right here, to something like this, which is just way too big, comically oversized, not even available. Don't even look at this. So what you'll feel from the saxophone is just kind of a almost too tight and spongy feeling. You don't have that nice clean action. Typically what you'll feel is at the very beginning of you pressing that key down, it'll be somewhat light, and then as that key gets towards the end of its motion, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. So it's a lot like trying to run on the beach, but away from the water, where that sand is very fluffy and your feet kind of dig in. You don't have that firm, quick action that you would with a smaller spring. Okay, so like I said, typically this happens with older vintage horns. It could happen with newer horns, but it definitely happens with older vintage horns, especially the smaller guys, your sopranos and your altos. I've even had it happen with basses as well, where the springs just get so wallowed out that they're using a gigantic spring like this versus a normal size spring like this. So that's usually what you'll feel when it comes to having a spring that's just maybe a little too big, a little too wallowed out.
And so what are some things that we can do to prevent? Now, were you going to use your?
I was. I have this my demo. So here's a post. Okay, I came in early and drew that.
Very nice.
And what you'll find is the spring goes in a little hole. You insert it like so. These are that needle spring. So at the end of the needle spring, it looks like this. But what ends up happening is technicians or whoever that installs it will flatten it out and it has kind of a fishtail.
Okay.
Like that. I tell you right now, that is not the shape you want to see, because what ends up happening is as you press that fishtail into here, it's going to make this area just a little bit bigger. There it is. You can see how it's starting to get a little bit wallowed out. So I press that in there. That spring serves its purpose. It's nice and springy. It feels good. It's the correct size for the key it's used for. Maybe it gets broken. Next thing that happens is the next technician comes in and puts a larger spring in, and the next session puts a larger spring in. Next thing you know, you end up with a spring that looks like this.
Ooh.
And there is, you can see there's no flex to that guy versus having a nice little bit of flex, what you need. So what usually ends up happening is that key feels very stiff and very spongy. So what can be done to prevent a lot of this is how you flatten your springs at the end. We don't want a fishtail.
Okay.
We don't really want a fishtail. What we want is, so here's our spring. Okay. We don't want this fishtail look like this. What we want is it to be shaped more like a U. Okay. With obviously this is an over exaggeration. You're not really going to flatten this out, but this is the shapes that you want to be looking for. The width of this shape should be equal to the width of your post from here to here.
Oh, good tip.
So this whole widened area is going to go right into that post, and it's going to fit nice and snug. It's not going to be loose. Make sure you don't over-peen. That is also what happens with this. Not only the shape, but over-peening.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what is an example of over-peening?
Over-peening would be something that you take maybe a spring that's borderline, and then you really flatten it out. I mean, it's going to look something ridiculous like that. We don't want this as over-exaggeration, but we don't want it to be over-peen, and that's the nice thing about our advanced sax course, September 18th through the 21st, I think.
Yes, I think it is.
We will talk more about, I was right, 18th, 21st. I'll be here, hopefully.
Sure.
But we talk about springs. We talk about this topic right here. We're also going to talk about tensioning springs, not just with vintage, but new horns as well. Okay. So you want this. If you do this, you can see how this distance, it's not really going to fit tight in the post. It's only half of what we really need. Okay, so how you shape your spring is going to be a big factor on preventing this from happening.
Now, so that sounds like a technician issue.
Yes.
Can we talk about how to actually fix this issue?
We can.
And maybe go over some tools before we
Absolutely.
show how to fix it?
Yeah, couple tools that we have laid out here. First off, whatever set of springs you're going to be using. I just grabbed the MusicMedic nickel-plated springs. Okay. We have the blue, we have the nickel, we also have gold-plated springs. But these are the needle springs, so they do have a point to them. Calipers is always very handy when you're measuring, trying to determine what spring to put in. If you're replacing springs, you want to get the correct size rather than turning it into a guessing game. Spring tools, your spring pliers, your spring inserting pliers. I also have the broken, there they are right there, the broken spring removing pliers, you never know. I have my regular tools for, peening. I have my Xuron shears for cutting the springs to length. I have my tack hammer, and I have my bench block that I use only for flattening springs, which is why you can see all the dimples in them. So these are what the tools that I use for flattening the springs. Okay. We're going to have to actually get into working on this fix. I have a couple other tools here you can see that are not normally used for springs, like some solder. Solder and flux, we'll talk a little bit about this. Okay. Regular Stay Bright, regular Tix Flux. I also have a couple sets of, these are pentagonal broaches. They are 5-sided. They are using for, opening up holes rather than just using a drill bit. I can gradually open up a spring hole when it comes time. I have some other sizes as well. And this is really what I need to get the job done. I have a pin vise that goes down, you can see very small, because I need to hold very, very tiny drill bits. Okay, and the smallest one on here, and it's in there, is 0.3 millimeters. Okay, you can barely see it's in there.
Wow.
Okay, so this is what I will use to make my small brass tubing, and I start with just this, it's solid brass rod. Okay, so let me show you real quick. I'll draw it out.
Okay. And I will put a link in the description for some of these more specialty tools, because I know we have the tiny drill bits and piece of brass rod and all that stuff.
Yep.
And
so,
broaches.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, this is very important to have those. So just to kind of quickly show you on the lathe, I'm going to pop this guy into it. This is my chuck. And when I turn this down, okay, here it is right here. I'm going to make this diameter to be very small. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, very, very small. Then what I'm going to do is with my tiny drill bit, and I'm actually going to drill in and make a very tiny brass tube is what it is. Okay. And it's going to be very, very tiny. Okay. So I make a couple of those, part them off, have them pre-made, ready to go. This is kind of a case-by-case basis. I wish there was a thing that you could go out and buy brass tubing that you could use to insert there, but we have to get creative in the band instrument repair world, so we have to make it. So
Gotcha.
what I will do, so here's my post again. Okay. And here's my hole that's maybe just a little too big for whatever I need to put in there. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make it worse before I make it better. So with one of these broaches, I'm going to actually open up this hole to a predetermined diameter. That diameter, whatever this has been opened up to, is equal to my brass tubing. Okay, so this is opening whatever hole I've made it. I've measured my brass tubing. Hopefully my brass tubing will fit in this hole, so I don't make it too big, but I do make it a little bit bigger. And I would probably have to, if I had to estimate the size, I would say maybe about 2 millimeters. This is 1.6, so about 2 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters, maybe 3 millimeters.
Okay.
Is how big I will make my little pieces of brass tubing. Once I've opened this up, I will then insert my brass tubing into that hole that I've made. Okay, and the one thing you'll notice here is this is longer than what it needs to be. Okay, so this is my brass tubing. On the inside is probably a very small diameter because I'm going to open that up later for whatever size spring I end up using. But you notice I've made it longer than it needs to be. This is because when I solder this in, I don't want that solder to drip in that very tiny hole I spent all this time trying to make that's going to help me out. It's basically my pilot hole. Okay? So when I solder this in, I can heat everything up and I can flow my solder here, and it's going to fill in this area here, it's going to fill in here, and it's going to get all over there, but it's not going to drip into my actual spring hole. Once I have everything soldered in, I do all my cleanup, and then I trim these guys
Now,
back.
Ryan, how do you trim those pieces off?
I will usually do it by hand with a jeweler's file.
Okay.
Okay, jeweler's file to trim that guy back. Now keep in mind, in this we had a very small hole. Okay. Now what I can do is, depending on the diameter of the spring that's going to go in there, and it depends on a couple things, the size of the key usually, how much tension is needed to operate that key. So that is going to be determined obviously by the key. I'm going to put in my broaches to actually open up that hole to whatever diameter is going to work for whatever spring. And then I install it like we talked about earlier with making the U-shaped point peening area that is the entire width of my post. Actually, I'm sorry, it's this way.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. And there you go.
So let me ask you, Ryan.
Sure.
In terms of soldering,
Yeah.
can they? Can they hard solder these in, or do you ever do that?
I have not. I find that soft soldering is enough. It's not an area that's under a lot of tension or stress. And I even think pushing that spring in there is going to really keep everything in there. So in theory, you could almost do it without soldering these in, but I wouldn't. Okay, but yeah, I don't think hard soldering is the way to go. And a lot of times what you'll see is with some brands of saxophones, they have ribbed constructions, which is the big rib that sticks on the body, and then they have all the posts that stick out from that. So it would be kind of difficult to do your hard soldering without it affecting other areas, and it's difficult to actually remove that. If you had a horn that had individual posts, like a con or a king or a busher, you could remove that post and then hard solder it in there, but I find that soft soldering is plenty.
Okay. And then what about if they don't have a lathe? Is it even possible to do this process?
It is, but it is a little bit trickier, okay? Because I am dealing with very tiny drill bits and very small sizes. I like the advantage of having that lathe with that cross slide where I can come in and get appropriate amounts of, take off appropriate amounts of metal. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. It's going to take you a little bit, but it is possible using only a bench motor.
Okay. And in terms of, because you had mentioned in the beginning the different materials of springs, the nickel, the gold, blue, Is there a different feel to the player when you use these different types of springs?
I haven't noticed a feel issue with
Okay.
using, the different coated needle springs. This, like I said, this is the nickel. We have the traditional, what you'll find on most saxophones are blued needle strings. That bluing coating does a lot of preventative for rust. Obviously, the nickel coating prevents the rust as well. Same thing with the gold. But the material, their inner material is the same. So whether you use a nickel-plated spring or a gold or a blued, I think as long as it's the same diameter, it's going to pretty much feel the same.
Okay, very good. And then, and of course, the bluing is also a result of the hardening of the steel. What about the player? So, like, if you're a player out there and maybe you get a new saxophone, how do you feel when the tension is, say, too hard? Is it possible?
It is. It is. And a lot of times with
Spring
newer,
tension.
yes, a lot of times with newer horns, it's a matter of the spring having too much tension to it. And I've even seen it where it comes out and the spring has this whoop, this kink in it, and it has a lot of tension to it. You can do a couple different things. When I tension springs here in the Sax Pro Shop, I like to go for a gradual increase of that tension versus something that comes out straight and just kinks up like this. So you can adjust the amount of bend in your springs. If, let's say, this is too much, you can come in and bend it a little less. That'll give you a little less. That'll give you even less. Okay, maybe even none, since it's pretty much straight. So a lot of times with newer horns, and you feel a key that's maybe a little too heavy, it can be adjusted. Okay, you can unbend it to a certain point. Okay, if a spring is completely straight, it's no tension on it.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for that excellent demonstration. Woohoo, hey, shout out to Gamma Sax.
Yes.
He's over in Portugal. Hello. Make sure you guys take that hashtag saxophone springs, put that in the comments below. That's going to give you a chance to win 15% off any of the courses that we have coming up. The in-person courses coming up in 2023, and then in 2024 there are a bunch of virtual courses. So if you are somewhere else in the world, you can take these courses online.
Yep.
And we also have our winner. Our winner was RD Rodriguez. Send me an email to rich@MusicMedic.com. I will get you your Oleg sax enhancer and/or your discount code on any of the courses that we have coming up. Ryan and I are going to be away next week.
Not together.
Not together.
Separately away.
Separate trips, but we're going to skip next week. So we're going to be back on August 16th with a different topic on pad protrusion.
It's a good one.
So stay tuned, and if you guys have any other questions, put them in the comments below. We'd be happy to answer them. And that's going to do it for now. So until next time, happy repairing.